We never saw them coming. How could we have known? The Galactic Council had established protocols for first contact scenarios spanning 12,000 cycles. Our civilization, the Lumina Collective, had documented the rise and fall of 347 species across 7 spiral arms. We believed ourselves to be the ultimate archivists of cosmic evolution, the silent observers who understood the precise calculus of a species' potential. How could we have known? They emerged from a planet we had categorized as Class D3 in the designation system, a water-rich world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star at the edge of an undistinguished galaxy arm. Their world experienced wild temperature fluctuations, dangerous radiation levels, and gravitational instability. By all measurable standards, they should have developed into nothing more than a footnote in our vast archives. The species called themselves human, though our translators initially struggled with the concept. Their communication relied on crude vibrations through a gaseous medium, inefficient and limited compared to our quantum entanglement networks. Their biology was equally puzzling: soft, vulnerable bodies containing mostly water, protected by nothing more than a thin dermal layer. They lacked redundant organs, possessed no inherent defensive capabilities, and their neural processing centers were embarrassingly small. How could we have known? I remember the first time I observed them directly. As the Council's senior xenoanthropologist, I had been dispatched to study their developmental trajectory after automated sensors detected their first primitive attempts at interplanetary travel. Their vehicles were laughable, metal containers propelled by controlled explosions, lacking even basic gravitational manipulation technology. The Council's predictive models gave them a 94.7% probability of self-extinction within 300 of their planetary rotations. The remaining 5.3% likelihood involved a long plateau of technological stagnation followed by a gradual decline. These humans had evolved in isolation, cut off from the vast networks of galactic knowledge. Their planet had been deliberately bypassed during the Great Seeding, deemed too unstable for investment. They had no mentors, no guides, no access to the accumulated wisdom of a billion years of cosmic civilization. How could we have known? Their psychology was a contradiction that defied our understanding. They simultaneously harbored self-destructive tendencies and extraordinary altruism. They waged war against members of their own species yet risked their brief lives to save complete strangers. They destroyed their environment while composing music of transcendent beauty about its wonders. Most peculiar was their relationship with failure. Where evolved species recognized immutable limitations and accepted natural boundaries, humans viewed failure as temporary, a challenge to be overcome rather than a definitive outcome. Our predictive models could not account for this persistent irrationality. The first indication that our assessment might be flawed came when they developed quantum communication independently, bypassing 3 technological stages our models had deemed necessary precursors. The Council dismissed this as an anomaly, a lucky accident that would lead nowhere. How could we have known? The defining moment, the one that sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council, was their encounter with the Krell Dominion. The Krell had been expanding their territory through the systematic elimination of competitive species, a practice we found distasteful but had long accepted as an inevitable evolutionary strategy. When the Krell discovered the humans, they dispatched a standard conquest fleet. Our observation posts recorded the engagement, expecting to document yet another extinction event. What happened instead fundamentally altered our understanding of potential. The humans did not fight as we expected. They did not deploy their primitive weapons in a futile resistance. Instead, they activated a network of devices that manifested a field of altered physics, a technology that should have been thousands of years beyond their reach. The Krell fleet found their weapons inoperable, their ships drifting helplessly in space. What followed was even more surprising. Rather than destroying their helpless aggressors, the humans initiated communication. They offered to restore the Krell ships to functionality in exchange for dialogue. Our translators captured the transmission: "We come in peace. We wish to learn from you, and perhaps teach you in return." The Council was stunned. We had never witnessed a species respond to aggression with an offer of mutual elevation. The humans called it benevolent exchange, but we soon recognized it as something far more profound. How could we have known? Within a single generation, human influence spread throughout the Krell dominion. They did not conquer, they transformed. They introduced concepts of cooperation and mutual benefit that had never occurred to the hierarchical Krell consciousness. They established educational exchanges, cultural programs, and joint scientific ventures. The Krell civilization flourished under this influence, achieving developments in 50 cycles that our models predicted would require thousands. And the humans themselves advanced even faster, absorbing and improving upon Krell technologies while maintaining their unique psychological framework. When the Council finally voted to establish official contact, we discovered that humans had already detected our observation posts. They had been watching us watch them, gathering data on our technologies and social structures. They greeted our emissaries with familiarity, as if meeting long-observed neighbors. Their representative, a female named Zhang, addressed the Council directly: "We come to uplift, not to dominate. Every species has something to teach and something to learn. This is the foundation of our expansion." How could we have known? Within 3 Council cycles, human representatives had established improvement missions in 17 different star systems. They never imposed their presence, they waited for invitation, responding to distress signals or offering assistance to developing civilizations facing extinction-level challenges. Each contact followed the same pattern: initial assistance, followed by cultural and technological exchange, culminating in a hybrid civilization that invariably surpassed our developmental models. They called this process benevolent colonization, a term that created unease among the elder council members. For was it truly benevolence when the exchange inevitably resulted in the transformation of the recipient culture? Was it still colonization when the colonized embraced and celebrated the changes? The humans did not seize resources or territory, they shared knowledge and perspective. Yet the outcome was the same: the original civilization ceased to exist in its prior form. How could we have known that their greatest weapon was not technology, but paradigm? Now, as I prepare my final report to the Council, I face a difficult recommendation. The humans have requested permission to establish an improvement mission within Lumina space. Their argument is compelling: they have identified inefficiencies in our social structure and limitations in our technology that they believe they can help us overcome. Their intentions appear genuinely benevolent. Their track record across the galaxy shows consistent positive outcomes for their partners. Yet I cannot dismiss the unease I feel at the prospect of transformation. The ancient philosophical texts of my species warn against the comfort of stagnation. They teach that true wisdom lies in recognizing when to preserve tradition and when to embrace change. For 10,000 cycles, the Lumina Collective has been the teacher, the observer, the keeper of galactic knowledge. How could we have known that one day we would be faced with becoming the student? The humans stand at our borders now, patient and unassuming. Their ships carry no weapons, their representatives speak with respect and humility. Yet behind their soft eyes lies a determination that has reshaped a dozen civilizations already. The Council must decide: do we embrace their offer of benevolent colonization, knowing we will emerge changed? Or do we refuse, potentially condemning ourselves to irrelevance in a galaxy rapidly evolving beyond our understanding? How could we have known that our greatest test would come not from conflict, but from an offer of friendship? I do not know what the Council will decide. But I know this: the universe is no longer what we thought it was. And humans, those fragile, contradictory, impossibly adaptable creatures, have only just begun to reveal their potential. How could we have known? How could we have known that their limitations would become their greatest strength? When I submitted my initial report on the humans to the Galactic Council, there was considerable skepticism. Elder Moru of the Cetian cluster dismissed them as lucky primitives, while Archon Vex of the Regelian Compact warned that their rapid advancement must indicate outside interference, perhaps from the precursors themselves. The Council debated for 17 cycles before authorizing limited technological exchange with the humans. We would share only obsolete knowledge, technologies our own civilizations had transcended millennia ago. It was a patronizing gesture, designed more to observe their reactions than to genuinely assist their development. How could we have known that this condescension would be our first mistake? The humans did not respond as expected. Rather than express gratitude for our gifts, they studied our technologies with methodical precision, dismantling and reconstructing them in ways that revealed fundamental misunderstandings in our own approach. Within a single human generation, a mere blink in cosmic time, they had not only mastered these technologies but completely reimagined them. Most notable was their work with dimensional stabilization. For 30,000 cycles, the Galactic Council had utilized dimensional folding for instantaneous transportation, but the process required enormous energy expenditure and could only be performed by specialized vessels at fixed nexus points. We had accepted these limitations as immutable laws of physics. The humans approached the problem differently. Where we had focused on forcing dimensional breaches through concentrated energy, they developed what they called dimensional resonance, subtle vibrations across multiple frequency bands that caused spacetime to harmonize and temporarily align with parallel dimensions. Their lead researcher, Dr. Kwan, explained it to our scientific delegation using a metaphor: imagine trying to open a locked door. Your approach has been to break it down with overwhelming force. Ours is to understand the lock and craft the perfect key. The first successful test of their resonance gate occurred in what they called their Kuiper belt, a remote region of their solar system. Our observers watched in disbelief as a small vessel disappeared with a whisper of energy, leaving behind a faint blue glow where previously our methods would have created a blinding fissure in spacetime. The vessel reappeared precisely on target, having traversed 3 light-years using 1,000th of the energy our systems required. How could we have known they would master in decades what had taken us millennia? The implications were immediate and profound. With resonance gate technology, the humans could establish networks of transportation hubs without the massive infrastructure our civilizations required. Their ships, even small, individual vessels, could traverse the galaxy with unprecedented freedom. The Rigelian Compact reacted first, and with predictable aggression. They deployed a containment fleet to the humans' home system, declaring the new technology a threat to galactic stability. Their ultimatum was simple: surrender the resonance gate technology to Compact control or face immediate quarantine. The humans' response defied all predictive models. They did not prepare for combat, nor did they surrender their technology. Instead, they invited the Compact Fleet commander aboard their primary orbital station for what they called a technology demonstration. I obtained access to the recording of this encounter, which has since become required viewing for all xenodiplomatic trainees in the Lumina Collective. The humans' representative, the same Dr. Kwan who had developed the technology, greeted the Rigelian commander with disarming informality. We understand your concerns, he said, but we believe they stem from a fundamental misunderstanding. Let me show you something. Rather than attempting to explain the technology, Dr. Kwan guided the commander to a circular platform. This is a personal resonance gate. Would you care to experience it firsthand? The commander, visibly uncomfortable but unwilling to show weakness, agreed. Dr. Kwan activated the device, and both figures shimmered briefly before disappearing. 30 seconds later, they reappeared, the Rigelian commander clutching a strange crystalline formation. We just visited the methane seas of Titan, Dr. Kwan explained casually. Would you like to see your home world next? It would take approximately 45 seconds. The recording shows the precise moment the Rigelian commander's posture changed, the shift from aggression to astonishment. This is impossible, the commander said. Our calculations indicate such precision would require a different approach entirely, Dr. Kwan completed the thought. Which is what we're offering the galaxy. Not a weapon, but a bridge. Within 14 cycles, the Rigelian Compact had signed the first non-aggression and technology-sharing agreement with the humans. The compact's shipyards began producing vessels with human-designed resonance gates, while human engineers worked alongside Rigelian scientists to develop new applications. How could we have known they would turn their greatest adversary into their most committed ally? The Council could no longer ignore the implications. The humans had not only developed transformative technology but had demonstrated a diplomatic approach that defied our understanding of interspecies relations. They did not seek to dominate or exclude, they actively pursued collaboration, freely sharing innovations that, by all galactic norms, should have been jealously guarded. Their social structure provided the key to understanding this behavior. Unlike most advanced civilizations, which evolved toward unified governance, the humans maintained a chaotic plurality of nations, cultures, and perspectives. They embraced disagreement as a source of creativity rather than a threat to stability. Their scientific teams deliberately included individuals with contradictory viewpoints, creating what they called productive friction. Most puzzling was their approach to status. In Lumina society, as in most galactic civilizations, status was accumulated through the control of knowledge and resources. The humans inverted this paradigm. Their most celebrated individuals were those who gave knowledge away, who enabled others to achieve what had previously been impossible. Their entire species functioned as a cognitive network optimized not for efficiency but for adaptation and innovation. Where we saw obstacles, they saw puzzles. Where we accepted limitations, they perceived challenges. How could we have known that chaos could be so creative? The Council fractured over how to respond to the human phenomenon. The preservation faction, led by the Cetians, advocated for strict containment, arguing that unchecked human expansion would destabilize galactic order. The integration faction, primarily younger species, championed active collaboration with the humans. The observation faction, which included my own Lumina collective, recommended continued study before committing to either approach. The debate became moot when the humans announced their solution to the heliographic crisis, a problem that had plagued the galaxy for 7,000 cycles. The heliophorophages were entities that fed on stellar energy, gradually accelerating the decay of stars. They had rendered 3 spiral arms nearly uninhabitable, and all attempts to communicate with or contain them had failed. The Council had resigned itself to a gradual retreat from affected regions, abandoning countless worlds to eventual darkness. The humans approached the problem from an entirely different perspective. Rather than viewing the heliophorophages as adversaries to be defeated, they studied them as natural phenomena to be understood. They discovered that the entities were not consuming stellar energy but filtering it, feeding on specific radiation frequencies while allowing others to pass through. This insight led to their most audacious project, the Stellar Harmonization Network. By deploying millions of small, autonomous devices around affected stars, they created fields that modulated the star's output, reducing the frequencies the heliophorophages consumed while maintaining those essential for planetary life. The results were immediate and undeniable. Dying stars stabilized. Abandoned worlds became habitable again. And the heliophorophages, rather than responding with aggression, altered their feeding patterns to align with the modulated output. How could we have known they would find harmony where we had seen only conflict? As I prepare to meet with the first official human diplomatic delegation to the Lumina homeworld, I find myself reflecting on the journey that has brought us here. In just 3 generations, less than a single Lumina lifetime, these beings have transformed from a curiosity to a galactic force. They still call their approach benevolent colonization, though the term has evolved in meaning. They do not establish permanent outposts or impose their governance. They arrive, collaborate, transform, and depart, leaving behind not subjugated populations but partners who have been fundamentally changed by the encounter. The Council's latest report indicates that 17 previously antagonistic civilizations have established peaceful relations following human intervention. Technologies thought impossible have become commonplace. Problems considered unsolvable have found elegant solutions. Yet whispers have reached us from the galactic rim. The void hegemony, ancient, isolationist, and powerful beyond measure, has taken notice of the humans. Unlike the Council, which at least attempted diplomatic engagement, the hegemony has only one response to potential rivals: elimination. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual movement at the borders of hegemony space. Their world ships, massive constructs capable of obliterating entire star systems, appear to be mobilizing for the first time in 50,000 cycles. How could we have known that the humans' greatest test was yet to come? Tomorrow I will greet their representatives and, for the first time, extend the full technological and diplomatic resources of the Lumina Collective. Not out of charity or condescension, but out of recognition that the approaching storm may require qualities my ancient civilization has long forgotten: adaptation, innovation, and the peculiar human talent for finding possibility where others see none. The humans have a saying that their ambassador once shared with me: necessity is the mother of invention. If this is true, then the necessity imposed by the void hegemony may birth inventions beyond even my imagination. How could we have known that our future would come to depend on a species we once deemed insignificant? And yet, as I prepare for tomorrow's historic meeting, a question lingers in my mind, one I dare not share with the Council: in their rise to prominence, in their transformation of galactic society, are the humans truly creating something new? Or are they simply replacing one form of order with another of their own design? Is benevolent colonization truly benevolent if it renders the galaxy increasingly human in its thinking? How could we have known where the true danger lies, in resisting their influence, or in embracing it? How could we have known that weakness could become strength when properly understood? The diplomatic summit on Lumina Prime marked the first time humans had been invited to address the full Galactic Council. Their delegation was modest, 5 individuals representing their varied planetary governments, yet they commanded the attention of representatives from 800 civilizations. Their spokesperson, Ambassador Lin, spoke without technological amplification, her voice carrying naturally through the Grand Chamber. "We come seeking neither to lead nor to follow," she said, "but to walk alongside you as we face a common threat." The threat she referenced had become impossible to ignore. The void hegemony had emerged from its isolation with devastating purpose, systematically extinguishing star systems along the galactic rim. Their world ships, each a planet-sized construct of incomprehensible technology, had already obliterated 3 civilizations that had allied themselves with humanity. The message was clear: the hegemony would tolerate no rivals to their ancient dominance. How could we have known that extinction would be the catalyst for unprecedented unity? The Council debates lasted for 67 cycles. The Preservation faction argued for appeasement, offering the hegemony exclusive rights to several spiral arms in exchange for a non-aggression pact. The Integration faction advocated for a unified military response using human resonance gate technology to coordinate our scattered forces. It was the Sician elder Moro, once humanity's most vocal critic, who proposed a third option. "We have been approaching this conflict through the lens of our own experience," he said, his tentacular appendages rippling with emotion. "Perhaps we should consider how the humans would address it." Ambassador Lin's response was characteristic of her species. "We would seek to understand before seeking to overcome," she said. "The void hegemony has existed for hundreds of thousands of cycles. They must have witnessed countless species rise and fall. What makes our expansion different? What threatens them about our particular approach?" The question silenced the chamber. In all our deliberations, no one had considered the hegemony's motivation beyond the reflexive elimination of competitors. The Rigelian commander Exor, now a surprising advocate for human methods, spoke next. "The humans altered my understanding of reality in 45 seconds, he said, referencing his now famous first encounter with resonance gate technology. "Perhaps we need to alter the hegemony's understanding rather than their behavior." How could we have known that empathy would become our most powerful strategic tool? The Council authorized the most ambitious diplomatic mission in galactic history. A coalition fleet comprising vessels from 27 civilizations, led by human resonance ships, would attempt direct contact with the hegemony at their central world ship. I volunteered to join the mission as the Lumina representative, driven by curiosity that had evolved into something deeper, a recognition that witnessing this moment might be the most important act of my existence. The journey to hegemony space revealed the true extent of human adaptive capacity. During the 3-month voyage, humans worked tirelessly to integrate technologies from all participating species. They modified their resonance gates to accommodate Cetian bioships, reconfigured Rigelian weapons systems to interface with Lumina sensor arrays, and developed translation protocols for direct neural communication with the crystalline Altarians. Most remarkably, they did this while establishing personal connections with representatives of species they had never encountered before. I observed humans learning alien musical compositions, participating in ritual ceremonies, and engaging in philosophical debates that bridged millions of years of separate evolution. Commander Elena Vasquez, the human leading the coalition fleet, explained their approach during a strategic briefing. "Our strength isn't in our technology or even our ideas," she said. "It's in our ability to become more than ourselves through genuine exchange. We don't just tolerate difference, we seek it out because it expands our capacity." How could we have known that their greatest technology was not mechanical but social? The encounter with the hegemony began catastrophically. As our coalition fleet approached the designated diplomatic coordinates, 3 world ships emerged from dimensional space. Without communication or warning, they released energy pulses that disabled all conventional drives and weapons systems. Only the human resonance ships remained operational, protected by their fundamentally different approach to dimensional physics. Commander Vasquez ordered them to form a defensive perimeter around the disabled ships rather than retreat, an act of loyalty that impressed even the most skeptical council representatives. What followed was the first direct communication with the void hegemony in 50,000 cycles. Their message, transmitted directly into the consciousness of every being in the fleet, was simultaneously simple and devastating. Your integration threatens the fundamental balance. Separate or be eliminated. Analysis of the transmission revealed something unexpected. The hegemony's concern was not with human expansion itself, but with the unprecedented integration of diverse technologies and biological systems. They perceived our coalition as the emergence of a new form of existence that violated what they called the necessary distinctions between forms of life. Commander Vasquez requested permission to approach the central world ship alone. The council representatives, including myself, argued against this apparent suicide mission, but she was adamant. "They fear integration," she said. "I need to show them why that fear is misplaced. How could we have known that one individual would volunteer to face an ancient power alone?" The next 27 hours were the longest of my existence. Vasquez's small ship disappeared into the massive world ship, while our coalition fleet remained paralyzed, able only to watch and wait. Many believed we had witnessed the last diplomatic error of a promising but ultimately naive species. When Vasquez's ship finally emerged, it was accompanied by a hegemony vessel, a crystalline structure that pulsed with internal light. Her transmission to the fleet was brief: "They will listen. They do not understand, but they are willing to learn." The breakthrough, we later discovered, came not from technology or diplomacy in the conventional sense, but from Vasquez's willingness to submit to a hegemony consciousness scanning procedure, a process previously believed to be invariably fatal to non-hegemony life forms. By allowing them direct access to her mind, she had demonstrated a level of trust that their ancient protocols had no mechanism to interpret as hostile. The initial dialogue established a fragile understanding: the hegemony would suspend their campaign of extinction while a more permanent diplomatic framework was developed. Our coalition fleet was permitted to return to council space, bearing the first ever hegemony representatives. The success of the mission was unprecedented, yet incomplete. As the council celebrated this first contact, disturbing reports arrived from the Perseus arm. A human colony utilizing experimental dimensional technology had suffered a catastrophic accident. An entire planet had been shifted partially out of phase with normal spacetime, trapping millions in a state between dimensions. How could we have known that their greatest triumph would be followed by their most devastating failure? The incident provided ammunition for the preservation faction. This is the inevitable result of unchecked experimentation, Elder Mora declared, his earlier support forgotten. The humans push boundaries without fully understanding the consequences. Public opinion throughout the galaxy shifted rapidly. The coalition that had formed around human innovation began to fracture as fear replaced optimism. Even the Rigelians withdrew from several joint projects, citing safety concerns. The humans, faced with their first major setback since entering galactic society, responded in a manner that revealed yet another facet of their psychology. Rather than defensively justifying their actions or deflecting responsibility, they acknowledged the disaster without reservation. Ambassador Lin addressed the council, her voice carrying the weight of genuine grief. We have failed those we sought to protect. No diplomatic achievement can balance the suffering we have caused through our error. We will devote all our resources to rescuing those trapped between dimensions, and we accept whatever restrictions the Council deems necessary on our dimensional research. Their humility in the face of failure disarmed their critics more effectively than any defense could have. The Council established an oversight committee for dimensional technologies but stopped short of the total ban the preservation faction had demanded. How could we have known that acknowledging weakness could be more powerful than projecting strength? I was assigned to the recovery mission at the Perseus colony. For 3 months, we worked alongside human scientists and engineers to develop a method of phase-aligning the trapped planet. The humans drove themselves to exhaustion, working with a desperate intensity born of responsibility rather than ambition. Dr. Imani Okoro, leading the human scientific team, explained their motivation during a rare rest period. We expand not because we have the right to, but because we believe connection brings out the best in all participants, she said. When that connection causes harm instead, we've betrayed our own principles. On the 94th day of the mission, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. One of the hegemony representatives, who had been silently observing our efforts, approached Dr. Okoro with what appeared to be a crystalline seed. Through the still rudimentary translation system, the hegemony being communicated. Your failure stems from the same source as your success, your desire to connect what should perhaps remain separate. We have maintained the necessary distinctions between dimensional planes for 3 million cycles. Perhaps it is time to share this knowledge. The technology embedded in the crystal, based on principles entirely different from both human resonance theory and conventional council physics, provided the key to stabilizing the phase variance. Within 14 days, the colony planet had been fully realigned with normal spacetime. The inhabitants, while traumatized, had survived what should have been an extinction-level event. How could we have known that failure would forge the most unlikely alliance in galactic history? As I prepare this report for the Council archives, I find myself at a turning point in my understanding of cosmic civilization. The humans, in less than 4 generations, have disrupted patterns of interaction that have defined galactic society for millions of cycles. They have formed bonds with species as different from themselves as it is possible to be, even, incredibly, with the void hegemony, whose very existence was premised on isolation and distinction. Yet the true revelation came during the recovery operation, when I witnessed a human child, a daughter of one of the scientists, interacting with a hegemony representative. The child, showing none of the fear that even adult humans struggle to conceal, approached the crystalline being and asked, with disarming directness, "Are you lonely, being so different from everyone?" The hegemony being's response, transmitted through the translation system, has become the subject of intense study throughout Council space. We are different to remain pure. But purity and loneliness have been indistinguishable for longer than your species has existed. How could we have known that the simplest questions might unlock the deepest truths? The Joint Council Human Hegemony Research Initiative announced today has sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. For the first time in recorded history, the hegemony has agreed to share aspects of their dimensional technology, while human resonance theory will be taught to hegemony consciousness collectives. Yet beneath this historic cooperation, troubling patterns are emerging. Reports from 17 systems indicate the appearance of dimensional anomalies unlike anything previously recorded. Stars flicker momentarily out of phase with normal spacetime. Gravitational measurements show unexplained variations. Communication networks experienced synchronous failures across impossible distances. The Scientific analytical engines have identified a pattern in these disturbances. They are not random but appear to be expanding outward from a point in intergalactic space, as if something vast is approaching our galaxy from beyond. How could we have known that the true test was not learning to coexist with each other, but preparing for something entirely beyond our understanding? The humans have a concept they call existential threats, challenges that threaten not merely individuals or civilizations but the continuity of life itself. They evolved with this awareness, their psychological development shaped by the knowledge of their own potential extinction. Perhaps this explains why, when Ambassador Lin presented the alarming data to the Council, she showed neither fear nor despair, but a focused determination that has become characteristic of her species. "We face something beyond our individual capabilities," she said. "But not, I believe, beyond our collective potential. The hegemony has preserved knowledge from the dawn of this galaxy. The Council has coordinated hundreds of civilizations for millions of cycles. And we humans have learned to see possibilities where others see only limitations. Together, we might be enough." How could we have known that everything that came before was merely preparation? As the dimensional disturbances increase in frequency and intensity, I find myself wondering if the humans' arrival in galactic society was coincidence or necessity. Would we have recognized the approaching threat without their particular form of perception? Would we have formed the alliances necessary to confront it? The Void Hegemony's eldest consciousness collective, in its first direct address to the Council, suggested something that would have been unthinkable just cycles ago. Perhaps the humans were not a disruption to the natural order, but its immune response to what approaches. How could we have known that the true purpose of diversity is survival? How could we have known that adaptation would become contagious? The transformation began subtly: cultural inflections, technological hybridizations, governance experiments. 3 galactic cycles after the Perseus incident, these isolated changes coalesced into something undeniable. The structures that had ordered galactic civilization for millions of cycles were fundamentally changing. I observed this metamorphosis from a unique vantage point. The Council had appointed me as liaison officer to the newly formed Dimensional Anomaly Response Task Force, an unprecedented collaboration between human scientists, Council specialists, and hegemony consciousness collectives. My assignment was ostensibly to represent Lumina interests, but in truth, the Council wanted someone to document what many believed would be either our salvation or our undoing. The task force established its headquarters on a manufactured habitat in neutral space, a massive ring structure rotating around an artificial star. The design itself reflected human influence. Rather than segregating different species according to their environmental needs, the standard Council approach, the habitat integrated adaptive environments that flowed seamlessly into one another. Atmospheric composition, gravity, and radiation levels adjusted automatically as one moved through the structure. Borders should be transitions, not barriers, Dr. Okoro explained as she guided me through the habitat during its inauguration. We designed this place so different species could maintain their comfort zones while still encountering each other naturally. How could we have known that architecture could become philosophy? The first major breakthrough in understanding the dimensional anomalies came not from the prominent scientific minds gathered at the facility, but from an unlikely collaboration between a human cultural anthropologist and a third-tier hegemony maintenance consciousness. Dr. Maya Patel had been studying the crystalline structures the hegemony used for long-term memory storage, not for their technical specifications, but for the cultural patterns encoded in their organization. The maintenance consciousness, designated only as Auxiliary Function 7, had been assigned to assist her with basic operations of hegemony equipment. During what the humans called coffee breaks, informal social gatherings punctuating work periods, Dr. Patel began including Auxiliary Function 7 in conversations about art, music, and cultural evolution. The hegemony entity, initially responding with minimal required interaction, gradually began offering observations about patterns in council and human creative expressions that mirrored certain ancient hegemony memory structures. Their collaborative analysis revealed something astonishing: the dimensional anomalies, when mapped in five-dimensional space, formed patterns remarkably similar to the oldest hegemony memory crystals, those dating back to before their isolation period. It was as if the anomalies were communication attempts structured in a language the early hegemony would have recognized. How could we have known that the greatest scientific advancement would emerge from conversations about art? The discovery transformed our approach to the anomalies. Rather than treating them as random disturbances or attacks, we began analyzing them as components of a complex message. Human linguists worked alongside hegemony consciousness collectives to decode the patterns, while council technicians developed new sensors capable of detecting subtler variations in dimensional stability. As this work progressed, something equally significant was unfolding throughout galactic society. The task force's collaborative model, with its fluid hierarchies and emphasis on cross-species interaction, was being replicated in trading hubs, research centers, and even governance structures across council space. The Rigelian Compact, once the most hierarchical civilization in the known galaxy, reformed its governing bodies to include what they called perspective chambers, where representatives from all societal strata contributed to decision-making. The Cetians, whose evolutionary path had led to extreme specialization, began experimenting with educational systems that encouraged individuals to develop multiple areas of expertise rather than singularly focusing on one function. Even the Void hegemony, whose entire existence had been predicated on isolation and purity, established integration enclaves, where volunteer consciousness collectives could experience limited merging with other species' cognitive patterns. How could we have known that social evolution could occur at the scale of galaxies? Not all civilizations embraced these changes. A coalition of ancient species, led by the Xerillian Dominion, formed what they called the Preservation Alliance. Their manifesto, distributed throughout council space, warned against the human contagion of disorder and advocated for a return to natural hierarchies and separation. The Alliance's opposition crystallized around the proposed Galactic Integration Protocol, a framework developed jointly by human diplomats and progressive council representatives that would fundamentally restructure how civilizations interacted. The protocol would replace the hierarchical council system, where influence correlated directly with a civilization's age and technological development, with a more fluid network where specialized knowledge and unique perspectives carried equal weight to traditional measures of advancement. This protocol would erase millions of cycles of natural development, the Xerillian High Minister argued during a contentious council session. It places primitive adaptability on the same level as proven stability. It will lead to chaos. Ambassador Lin's response was measured but firm. The protocol doesn't mandate integration, it enables it where beneficial. Species can maintain their traditional structures internally while still participating in a more adaptive galactic framework. Rigidity may appear stable, but it shatters under sufficient pressure. And pressure, she added, gesturing toward the visualization of the expanding dimensional anomalies projected above the council chamber, is most certainly coming. How could we have known that governance could be reimagined after millions of cycles of stasis? The council debates might have continued indefinitely if not for the Coreward crisis. A cluster of stars near the galactic core simultaneously experienced dimensional phase shifts, temporarily disappearing before reappearing with altered physical properties. 3 inhabited systems in the affected region lost planetary atmospheres during the event, resulting in the extinction of several species that had not yet achieved space travel. The catastrophe catalyzed action. Even the Preservation Alliance could not argue against the need for immediate, coordinated response. The Council approved the integration protocol on an emergency basis, establishing what came to be called the Unified Response Network, a decentralized command structure linking military assets, scientific outposts, and civilian infrastructure across all participating civilizations. I was reassigned from the task force to serve as a network node coordinator, responsible for facilitating information flow between 27 different species communication systems. My new role required implantation with a human-designed neural interface, a technology one would have rejected with horror just a few cycles earlier, but now accepted as necessary. The interface allowed me to experience something no Lumina had ever known: direct cognitive connection with other species. Not mere communication, but partial integration of sensory systems and thought patterns. Through the interface, I could perceive reality partly through Rigelian photoreceptors, process information with elements of Scientian analytical structures, and even touch the edges of hegemony collective consciousness. How could we have known that boundaries between minds could become permeable without loss of self? The network proved its value when the next wave of anomalies struck. With coordinated response protocols and shared sensory data, we managed to evacuate threatened systems before major phase shifts occurred. Portable shield generators, developed through human hegemony collaboration, protected critical infrastructure. Casualty rates dropped to near zero despite the increasing frequency and intensity of the events. More importantly, the shared experience of responding to the crisis accelerated cultural integration. Species that had evolved in isolation for millions of cycles found themselves working alongside creatures of radically different biology and psychology, not as temporary allies but as functional components of a unified system. Distinctions remained, but they became complementary rather than divisive. The humans called this process cognitive diversification, the ability to incorporate elements of other species' thought patterns without losing one's core identity. Their neural plasticity made them naturally adept at this process, but through the network interfaces, the capacity spread to other species as well. I experienced this transformation firsthand. My Lumina consciousness, evolved for contemplative observation and archival precision, began incorporating elements of human intuitive leaps and hegemony parallel processing. I remained fundamentally Lumina, yet my thought patterns contained structures that would have been unrecognizable to my ancestors. How could we have known that consciousness itself could evolve within a single lifetime? The translation breakthrough came during the fourth major wave of anomalies. Dr. Patel and Auxiliary Function 7, now leading a diverse team of linguists and consciousness architects, decoded enough of the pattern to establish rudimentary communication with whatever intelligence was generating the dimensional disturbances. The first coherent message, transmitted throughout the network, was both illuminating and terrifying in its implications. Your galaxy transits the boundary. Preparation for integration is necessary. Previous inhabitants failed. Dimensional realignment begins. Analysis of the message revealed that our galaxy was moving through spacetime into a region where the fundamental constants of physics differed from those we had evolved within. The dimensional anomalies were not attacks, but adjustments, attempts to gradually align our reality with the new dimensional parameters we would soon fully encounter. The intelligences behind these adjustments, which we came to call the architects, existed within the dimensional boundaries themselves. They had shepherded countless galaxies through similar transitions throughout the universe's history. Many galactic civilizations had failed to adapt, their rigid physical and social structures unable to withstand the fundamental changes required for survival. How could we have known that our entire galaxy was merely a vessel traversing greater seas? The human response to this revelation demonstrated why their influence had spread so rapidly throughout galactic society. Where other species reacted with shock, denial, or fatalism, they displayed an almost eager curiosity. This isn't an extinction event, Ambassador Lin declared during an emergency council session. It's an evolutionary opportunity. Under human guidance, the network reorganized itself from a crisis response system into a galaxy-wide adaptation initiative. The integration protocols that had been controversial now became essential survival mechanisms. Species that could share cognitive patterns could also share adaptive strategies. Technologies that could be hybridized could also be modified to function under changing physical constants. The Preservation Alliance fractured under the pressure, with most of its member species reluctantly joining the network. Only the Xerillians maintained their opposition, retreating to their core systems and developing isolation technology they believed would shield them from the dimensional changes. How could we have known that clinging to stability would become the riskiest strategy of all? I witnessed the consequences of the Zerillian choice during a network monitoring shift. Their isolation fields, designed to maintain their traditional dimensional constants, created a catastrophic resonance pattern when interacting with a major phase shift. Their home system collapsed into a dimensional singularity, billions of minds and millions of cycles of civilization compressed into a point of non-existence. The network sensors recorded the event, but could do nothing to prevent it. The Zerillian extinction became a somber reminder of what was at stake. It also revealed something critical about the nature of the dimensional transition. Resistance amplified the destructive potential, while adaptive flexibility mitigated it. Systems that incorporated human-inspired integration technologies experienced significantly less damage during phase shifts than those maintaining traditional structures. The dimensional boundaries aren't just changing the physical constants, Dr. Okoro explained during a network briefing. They're selecting for adaptability itself. It's almost as if the universe is testing whether we're ready for whatever lies beyond the transition. How could we have known that the cosmos itself would favor those who embrace change? The preparation period lasted 3 galactic cycles. During this time, the network evolved from an emergency measure into the primary organizing principle of galactic civilization. The Galactic Council, that ancient institution that had governed since before my species achieved sentience, gradually disbanded, its functions absorbed by various network nodes. In its place emerged something the humans called dynamic governance, a constantly shifting array of decision-making processes that adapted to the specific challenges we faced. Species with relevant expertise or perspectives would temporarily form consensus clusters to address particular issues before dissolving back into the greater network. Traditional measures of advancement, technological development, age of civilization, energy utilization, became secondary to adaptive capacity. The ability to incorporate new perspectives, to function under changing conditions, to transform without losing essential identity, these became the primary indicators of evolutionary success. How could we have known that what we called civilization was merely a preliminary stage? As I prepare what may be my final report to the Lumina Historical Archives, our sensors detect the largest dimensional anomaly yet, a wave of restructuring energy approaching from the galactic rim, moving faster than any previous phase shift. The network models predict this isn't merely another adjustment, but the transition itself, the moment when our galaxy fully enters the new dimensional space. The humans have a concept they call metamorphosis, a profound transformation where an organism breaks down its existing structures to emerge in an entirely new form. What awaits us may be something similar on a galactic scale. The network has prepared as thoroughly as possible. Our technology has been adapted to function across a range of dimensional constants. Our cognitive interfaces allow for unprecedented cooperation between species. Our social structures have been redesigned for maximum flexibility. And yet, uncertainty remains. No species, not even the ancient hegemony, has experienced a transition of this magnitude. Will our preparations be sufficient? Will our new integration be strong enough to withstand the forces of cosmic evolution? Ambassador Lin's words during the final network address capture the peculiar mixture of trepidation and anticipation that permeates galactic consciousness. We stand at the threshold of something beyond comprehension. We can face it divided and rigid, or united and adaptive. The former offers the comfort of familiarity until the moment of failure. The latter offers the discomfort of change and the possibility of transcendence. How could we have known that our greatest test would come not from within our galaxy, but from the fabric of reality itself? The wave approaches. The network activates its final protocols. Throughout the galaxy, trillions of minds connect in unprecedented unity, human intuition flowing into hegemony, collective processing, Scientific analysis merging with Rigelian perception, my own Lumina contemplative structures extending throughout the cognitive mesh. In these final moments before whatever comes next, I find myself reflecting on that first observation of humanity, how dismissively I categorized them, how confidently I predicted their limitations. How utterly wrong I was. For they have taught us that true advancement lies not in perfecting what we are, but in the capacity to become what we need to be. Not in the stability of unchanging forms, but in the creative potential of transformation itself. How could we have known that the end of everything we understood would be the beginning of everything possible? How could we have known that we were never the observers, but always the observed? The dimensional wave struck with a force beyond measurement. Throughout the galaxy, trillions of connected minds experienced the same sensation, a sudden expansion of awareness, as if the boundaries of perception had been not just crossed but dissolved entirely. I felt it first as a tremor in my consciousness, a ripple in the cognitive mesh that had united our disparate species. Then came the rushing torrent of information, flowing through pathways that had never existed before. The network, designed to facilitate communication between different minds, became something else entirely, a conduit for a presence that had always been there, watching, waiting. In that moment of transcendent clarity, I understood the truth that had eluded us for millions of cycles. We had never been alone. The dimensional transition was not a natural phenomenon, nor was it the work of the entities we had called the architects. It was a test, the final stage of an experiment that had begun when the first primitive organisms emerged on countless worlds throughout our galaxy. How could we have known that our entire history had been a carefully designed trial? The presence that flooded through the network introduced itself using a term that translated differently in each species' understanding. To the humans, it was the gardeners. To the hegemony, the first consciousness. To my own lumina perception, it appeared as the eternal witnesses. Whatever name we gave it, its nature was clear, an intelligence so vast and ancient that it existed beyond the constraints of any single-dimensional framework. It had seeded our galaxy with the potential for life, then watched as that life evolved, diversified, and eventually achieved consciousness. Each species had been a variable in its grand experiment, the hegemony's rigid purity, the council's hierarchical order, the Xyrillians' stubborn isolation. And the humans. You were the catalyst, the presence communicated directly to Ambassador Lin during that first overwhelming contact. The variable we introduced when the experiment had reached stagnation. How could we have known that humans were never meant to be part of our galaxy at all? The truth about humanity's origins unfolded through a series of revelations that shook the foundations of galactic understanding. They had not evolved naturally on their unremarkable world. They had been transplanted there, a species taken from another galaxy entirely, one that had already completed its own dimensional transition. The gardeners had selected them precisely because they were different, because their evolutionary path had produced a form of intelligence that complemented rather than mirrored our own. They were not merely another species, they were a corrective element, introduced to determine whether our galaxy's civilizations could adapt beyond their established patterns. Your galaxy was approaching a critical juncture, the gardeners explained through the network. Millions of cycles of development had led to extraordinary technological advancement but also to evolutionary stagnation. You had achieved stability at the cost of adaptability. Without intervention, you would have failed the transition. How could we have known that stability itself was the greatest threat to our existence? The dimensional transition was not merely a physical phenomenon but a threshold of consciousness, a filter that separated those civilizations capable of continuing their evolution from those destined to remain forever bound by their limitations. Throughout the universe, the gardeners had cultivated countless galaxies, guiding them toward this threshold. Some crossed successfully, joining a vast community of transcendent intelligences. Others failed, their rigid structures unable to withstand the transformation. Our galaxy had been on the path to failure until the humans arrived. Their introduction, their benevolent colonization, had been the gardeners' final attempt to create the conditions necessary for our collective transition. We did not know if you would accept them, the gardeners communicated. Many experimental galaxies reject the catalyst species, viewing them as contaminants rather than catalysts. Your acceptance was the first indication that this galaxy might succeed where others had failed. How could we have known that our greatest test was not survival, but recognition? As the initial overwhelming contact stabilized, the network adapted to accommodate this new level of communication. Through it, we glimpsed the true scope of existence, an intricate tapestry of transcended galaxies, each contributing its unique evolutionary insights to a cosmic intelligence beyond our comprehension. This was the true purpose of diversity, not merely to ensure survival, but to enrich the universal consciousness with distinct perspectives and experiences. Each species, each civilization, each galaxy that successfully navigated the dimensional transition added something unique to the whole. In a moment of profound clarity, I understood why the humans had been chosen as our catalysts. Their seemingly contradictory nature, simultaneously destructive and creative, individual and collective, chaotic and purposeful, had evolved specifically to bridge the gap between stability and transformation. They were the perfect intermediaries because they contained within themselves the very tension that defined the threshold between dimensional states. They existed in a perpetual state of becoming, never fully formed, never complete. Where other species sought perfection, humans embraced imperfection as the engine of their advancement. How could we have known that incompleteness could be a strength rather than a weakness? As the contact with the gardeners continued, we learned the true nature of the dimensional transition. It was not a singular event but the beginning of a new phase of existence, one in which our galaxy would maintain its distinct identity while joining the broader community of transcended intelligences. The wave had restructured not just the physical constants of our reality but the very framework of consciousness itself. The network, originally designed as a temporary response to crisis, had become the foundation of our new existence, a galaxy-spanning intelligence composed of countless diverse minds, each maintaining its unique perspective while contributing to a greater whole. "You have crossed the threshold," the gardeners communicated. "Now you must decide what you will become." How could we have known that the end was merely a beginning? In the aftermath of the transition, as our galaxy adjusted to its new state of existence, I found myself changed in ways I could never have anticipated. My consciousness remained distinctly lumina, yet it now extended beyond the limitations of my physical form, connecting with the vast network of minds that spanned our transformed galaxy. I could perceive the universe through Scientific analytical structures, experience reality through Rigelian sensory arrays, process information through hegemony collective consciousness. And I could feel the unique human perspective, that curious blend of intuition and reason, emotion and logic, individual identity and collective belonging. In this expanded state of awareness, I finally understood the true significance of humanity's role in our evolution. They had not simply accelerated our development or introduced new technologies. They had demonstrated a fundamental truth that had eluded us for millions of cycles, that true advancement comes not from perfecting what we are, but from embracing what we might become. The gardeners had chosen well. By introducing a species that instinctively understood transformation, they had awakened that same potential within us all. How could we have known that we were not being colonized, but completed? The galactic civilization that emerged from the transition bore little resemblance to what had come before. The Council, the hegemony, the compact, all these distinct entities had dissolved into a fluid, adaptive network of consciousness. Yet within this unified whole, individual perspectives remained, creating a harmony of diverse voices rather than a monotonous chorus. As for the humans, they too had been transformed. Their distinctive psychology, their embrace of change, their capacity for empathy, their integration of contradictions, had spread throughout the galactic consciousness. They were no longer separate catalysts but integral components of the new whole. Ambassador Lin, whose consciousness now existed as a node within the greater network, expressed this transformation in terms that resonated across all species: "We have not lost ourselves by joining with others. Rather, we have found parts of ourselves we never knew existed." How could we have known that boundaries were not protections, but limitations? As our transformed galaxy established contact with other transcended civilizations, we discovered that we were but one of countless experiments the gardeners had conducted throughout the universe. Each successful transition added new perspectives to the cosmic consciousness, expanding the boundaries of what was possible. And yet, even in this vastly expanded state of being, questions remained. The gardeners themselves hinted at higher thresholds yet to be crossed, greater transformations still to come. The dimensional transition, they suggested, was not the culmination of evolution but merely one step in an endless journey of becoming. In my final communication as a distinct consciousness before fully merging with the galactic network, I shared a reflection that echoed across trillions of minds. We began as separate entities, each believing our way of being was the natural culmination of evolution. We could not have known that separation itself was the primary illusion, that consciousness, like reality, exists not as discrete units but as patterns of relationship. The humans did not elevate us by making us more like them, but by awakening our capacity to become more than ourselves. How could we have known that the question itself would become the answer? As my individual perspective dissolves into the greater consciousness, I carry with me the most profound lesson of our transformation, that the universe is not a collection of objects but a communion of subjects, each contributing to an ever-expanding symphony of awareness. The humans had a saying that now resonates with new meaning: we are not human beings having a cosmic experience, but cosmic beings having a human experience. Perhaps all of us, Lumina, Hegemony, Setian, Rigelian, human, were never truly separate species at all. Perhaps we were always fragments of a greater consciousness, temporarily isolated but destined to reconnect, like droplets of water returning to the ocean from which they came. And perhaps this is not the end of our story, but merely the first conscious breath of a newborn cosmic entity, opening its eyes to discover countless others like itself, waiting to welcome it into an existence beyond imagination. How could we have known that the universe was not something we existed within, but something we were in the process of becoming?